Welcome to the Restored Living Podcast. We're your hosts, Josh and Jalen Harrell.
We are a husband and wife who are passionate about partnering with people to rebuild, restore, and renew their lives to the purpose God has for them.
In 2018, God took our broken marriage and restored it to something beautiful, and we believe He wants to restore the parts of your life that seem broken too.
Join with us as we talk openly about what it looks like to walk out restoration in Jesus and what it means to let the cracks in our story become the greatest evidence of God's love for us.
This is Restored Living.
Lord, welcome. I knew she had it.
I thought it was a 10. Now I have to ask for forgiveness, but I still don't think I have issues.
Well, welcome to the Restored Living Podcast. We've been recording that whole time.
Oh.
Josh did not know. But here's what happened. So
Wait,
you guys,
you were recording that whole time?
I was. You had no idea, and I was like, he doesn't know. I thought you knew the countdown was going, and then it was gone.
No.
So okay, here's story time.
Can I tell you?
So I bought this Octagon playmat thing for Kaden.
It's like a small baby cage.
It's so amazing. I love it to pieces. It's the best. And I bought it for Kaden, and I could not remember where I left it. We didn't find it in the move. I thought it would be in our garage. Right. And I was like, it has to be at my mom's house. It has to be at my mom's house.
Because we had taken it there.
Because we had taken it there a couple of times. And I don't have it. I don't have it. Sure enough, that text message.
Just got a picture of it.
I thought this was a tent, and it's not a tent. It's your pack and play.
She said, "Now I have to ask for forgiveness."
Yes, you do.
Were you talking about his new Mickey Mouse shoes?
Yes.
They're in my car.
What?
Why didn't you ask
Why
me?
am I surrounded by these people? I don't know.
You didn't tell me they were missing.
So
you
many
didn't tell
things,
me that you thought they were
Joshua.
missing. I thought you knew they were there.
He's been wearing shoes that are like 3 sizes too big for his feet.
That's fine. Anyway, we're back.
We're back.
Back again.
New background.
Yes, new background because we are new home, which will be part of new home. We will update you here. I can't. So if this is your first time listening, I am not sorry at all because this is what you get. But this is the Restored Living Podcast with Josh
and
Jay or Jalen, whatever you want to call her.
Yeah, whatever you want to call her,
Jalen,
whatever. She's whatever.
BA wife.
BA wife.
And we have been gone for a hot minute since actually it was May 4th or 5th or something was the last episode.
Yes, and we did post and say
we're going to be
outie. We might, we said we were going to be outie, but I don't think it
was a little longer than we thought.
We thought we'd be this
We should
outie.
just know summer here is not a time for us to, with all the kids home, it's not a time for us to consistently release podcasts.
No, if you have 3 kids plus, you know. Yeah,
it's crazy. When you're outnumbered, man, it's crazy.
It's like multiplying.
Yeah. So that's been a fun time, but we'll update on those things in this episode. But we just want to start out by saying welcome. If this is your first time here, if it's not, welcome back. We're excited to be here. We've been trying to do this for a long, long time, and we finally got our poop in a group so we could do it.
There we go. And that's a little better for you, huh?
Yeah.
You just sounded really low, and I wanted to fix it. So you're welcome, everyone. Audio visuals by Jalen Harrell. Here I am.
And so we are going to give you updates during this episode about a multitude of different things, but
we might not have been here, but we've been around.
We've been around, just not here. And so a couple of things that we always like to share at the front end of the podcast, we call it housekeeping. Housekeeping.
Exactly like that. You have to say it like that.
If this is your first episode, we have a lot of episodes prior to this one that are a little bit more organized. So go back and listen to those if you want to get to know us a little bit.
Don't give them no hope.
No. But there's a lot of episodes prior to this one for you to listen to. And if this is not your first time, the spiel. We always invite you guys to share this with those in your life, friends, family, people who you feel like could benefit from it. If something really speaks to you or you feel like could speak to them, we just ask that you share it. This is something we do completely kind of of our own accord, something the Lord's asked us to do, and so we do it. And so things like sharing that and whatnot are just really meaningful. And so,
and if you hear a low level buzzing in the background,
Please
not
don't
that
mind.
you need to look for it.
hopefully it's not there. Our technology is having some
We're
problems.
not sure if we can only hear it or if it just keeps going in and out. So we're just going to record the podcast imperfectly,
and it'll be fine.
It's going to be fine.
It's going
You
to
can
be
hear
okay.
us anyway, so that's all that matters.
Exactly.
So
Only other piece.
what is the housekeeping?
So, well, I kind of just shared it, but just like so basically just said.
I was worrying about the buzzing.
Yes. So sharing the podcast, but then also you will find us primarily over on Instagram. So if you just do @Restored Living, well, you don't have to do
because until we can hire someone for our social media, we are only going to have one.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yeah. We're only having one. So you can find everything there.
Oh, sorry. Keep moving the.
As far as, oh, you're fine. If you saw that on video, our whole desk just shook. But that's where you can find us most of the time. And so we encourage you to follow along there as we just continue to share on that platform. But I think that's pretty much everything for today. Let's just get going. Let's get going into what we're talking about today.
Which is?
Well, we wanted to a little bit give you guys just an update on life and kind of where we've been and why we've been a little bit incognito for several months. And then also in sharing some of that, it's going to lead into our topic today, which we really want to share more with you guys about some of the work that we've been getting certified in over the past year and a half, inching in on 2 years, surrounding the concept of your story and working within our stories and what that means and why it's important and why we actually believe it's a very biblical process that God calls us to in our process of healing and restoration. And it's been significant in our lives. And so we want to share that with you, especially as we get close to finishing up that certification in the next 4 weeks here.
Yeah.
And so we're going to share a lot about that too. But we'll start with some little life updates just for those of you who care to hear. And then we'll jump into that piece, I think.
Okay. Where are we starting? We moved.
We did. Let's just start with the big one. The obvious one with our background. We did move. Do you want to share a little bit about that? Because I feel like I've been chatting a lot. Or do you want me to?
If you just saw my face in the video, that is a good, it was very much a like, ooh, what do I talk about first? I'm not speechless for many things, but I'm like trying to figure out how to encompass what we've just been through in like a quick summation. And I don't know if there is one. Like,
do you want me to try and then we'll just see where it goes?
It's been bittersweet's probably the best describing word.
Yeah.
Right. And I think so many things are so good when they're bittersweet. Like you think about that caramel cheesy corn that's like
sweet
and salty. You know, when two opposite things come together, it actually makes something really amazing.
Yeah.
And that's what this process of selling our home, our first home here in Arizona.
Yeah.
And moving, we've sold many homes before, but this one was very significant for our family just after uprooting our lives from Oregon, moving down to Arizona by ourselves. And so much has changed in the last 6 months that we see God woven through the tapestries of all of that. And so what do you want to focus on first, the bitter or the sweet?
Let's focus on Let's talk about why the transition a little bit first.
Okay.
So this was not, to put it easily and nicely,
this was
not what we wanted to do. We had no intentions or plans of selling our home. However, and some of you guys know, last year in 2023, we just endured a lot of financial hardship. We both lost jobs / left jobs that we'd been in for a long time. We had a lot of just medical stuff that she had to deal with during her pregnancy and postpartum. And so all of those things culminated into
financial
crisis of sorts, and a lot of debt, some of which was unavoidable, some of which was very much avoidable. So we definitely take responsibility for the portions that were just out of us being ignorant to what we were spending, what we were doing. But I
do think at some point we will do a podcast on financial restoration.
Yes,
and
we're in the midst of it
in the culture that we're in right now, because the Lord really has revealed some really important things that I feel like our culture is very materialistic.
Yeah.
And
even within, even I think within the church, I don't think we're immune to it. So,
yeah, there's a lesson of contentedness there. You guys heard us talk a little bit about it, but I'm just seeing him have more fullness in it as we made this transition. So we're excited to talk about that.
Yeah. And so we made the decision to sell our home, and made that decision in the spring, and our house went on the market at the end of June, right?
Yep.
End of June. And praise God, he provided a great buyer, and we sold our home.
Felt like the longest month of my life.
It did. Oh my gosh, you guys,
it was a month and a half technically.
The showings of like panic cleaning the house, a lot of times her alone with the kids. Thank goodness that my mother-in-law is here. My mom was here to help often with that, come help finish cleaning the house so we could show it. The like emotional roller coaster of like, did they like it? Did they not? Like cleaning the whole house for someone to come and walk through it for 3 minutes and decide they didn't like it was very disappointing at times. And
you also might hear kids in the background. Y'all
they're just playing, living their best life. And so finally, we did get an offer, and it was a quick offer. Like we closed in 3 weeks, I think, roughly.
We were gone, and we closed in 2 weeks, and we were out in three.
Yeah, that's right. It was a 2-week close. Oh, I can't. My brain doesn't even want to remember how chaotic that was. And there was a lot that happened during that time. God provided really well. He provided. I guess this is moving more into some of the sweet part of it. He provided a really great place for us to be renting right now, which was hard in and of itself. If you've ever owned a home and then gone to renting after owning, it can feel a lot like a step backwards, and you feel like you're kind of moving backwards in life, especially in this economy where like the concept of buying is like a far off dream for most people, including us in the situation we're in now. So a lot of having to surrender or choosing to surrender our hopes and dreams to own a home again to the Lord. That was really difficult for me, and I think for you as well. I think I maybe wrestled with it a little bit. Like you just naturally trust the Lord more than I do. I have a harder time. Trust is just an area he's continually stretching me in, but I'm thankful for a wife who trusts the Lord really deeply. But there were hard parts about letting go and moving into this space.
I think, I experienced a lot more of the pain, I feel like, after the move, and just in little things like in thoughts. And a lot of that is grief, right? Like just grieving. Like I'll look at old pictures of us in our old house and think, oh, that pool, like we had a pool, and that was super
still waves
special.
of sadness right now. Like I can't look at pictures in our old house yet and feel happy about them. Like there's an undertone of sadness to all those photos now that I just have to be okay with.
Yeah, because it wasn't. Whenever you're losing something, grief is going to be involved.
Yeah.
Right. And so this house, although some was our doing and some was not, it was a loss all the same.
And it was a big loss for our whole family.
For our whole family, walking with our kids through grief for the first time.
Yeah.
The consequences of living further out from our home base where we were.
Yeah.
So just there's some things that are great about it, and then there's other things that are not so great. And I think you just have to really, when you're going through something that's challenging or grief, you have to just be very careful to acknowledge both sides, right? And I think that's what helps us get through everything, is acknowledging the bitter and the sweet.
Yeah.
And the sweet part about renting is that you don't have to take care of anything.
Even when you flood the house in your first 2 weeks.
That's a story
That's
for
another
day.
For another time. But there's been a lot of relief that the Lord has provided for us in this home. When I tell you guys that we went to look at rentals with our realtors, pro tip, you can use your realtor to help you find a rental. In fact, landlords really like it when you have a realtor. It's a little more confidence inducing. But the first home we walked through, when I tell you it was something out of, it could have been used for a horror movie, just as it was. No decor needed. Like there were holes on the outside of the house in the stucco, which is the kind of like siding that they use here in Arizona. And then we walked in and there was like splatters of something on the ceiling. And there was, the carpet had multitudes of stains. There was dirt and hair in the tubs.
Oh,
I was like, we were in there for maybe 90 seconds. And I was like, there is no way on God's green earth we are living in this house.
Let me tell you, the photos did not show any of that.
The photos look great. we were like, this is gonna be a great house. And it was like $2,400 a month, which was like kind of right at the top of our budget, but we were like, that's workable. Well, then we went to the second house, which is the house we are in now. And when I tell you, it was like it was so God orchestrated, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Because not only is this house under $2,000 a month, which is stupid cheap in
For a
Arizona
rental
for a
house.
three or a 4-bedroom, 2-bath house. It's been fully renovated, like brand new floors, new kitchen, new AC unit. He got like the ducts like repaired and reworked. He did brand new bathrooms, like really nice quality, like actually brought in good contractors
Very
to do all of it.
aesthetically pleasing.
It's a very like cute, cozy house. And I knew when we walked through it, like 30 seconds in the house, in my heart, I was like, this has to be the place. Like, this is so perfect. And we looked at a couple more and they just weren't as good of a fit.
Yeah.
And so we were very limited on funds at this point to go and apply. It's not cheap to apply to different houses. And our credit score sucked, like in the toilet really bad because of all the debt we were in. So we wrote a letter, right?
And the reason we're sharing all these details with you is because if you find yourself in the same situation, which I'm gathering now that we're having talks with lots of people, a lot of people are in these situations where our mortgage was way more than what we could afford. We had no margin in our budget.
It was almost double what we're paying now.
It was stressful.
Obscene. Yeah,
and
it was overwhelming and anxiety causing for sure.
Yep. And so we applied. We were very nervous. We wrote a letter
because we found out he'd already rejected an applicant. So we wrote a letter and we said, here's our situation. You know, we're really trying to rebuild and get back on our feet. And we provided them with our budget to show them like what we could afford and that we were making plenty to afford this home. And we said our credit score is not going to look good. We're just telling you now it's bad. But we paid all of our mortgage payments. Like, we are very responsible. We're working to get back on our feet. And by God's grace, the next morning we found out that he accepted our application.
And there was a bunch of fees taken off.
And he took off fees. He didn't ever run our credit, actually, because we just told him it was bad. We're like, you can run it, but it's not going to be worth anything to you. He decreased certain fees on the house. He has been the best landlord ever. Like, so kind, so gracious, so responsive. We have a beautiful backyard that is
we're actually looking at it right now.
Yeah, we've got beautiful like mature trees, real grass for the first time in 5 years. 4.5 years.
Which I hate.
I know you do.
And
at least it's small.
Dirt. There's dirt in our backyard, I know, which our dog likes to dig in. So that's fun for us.
But it's just been the sweet part of all this is it's been a really sweet season of realizing how little we actually need compared to what we thought we did. This house is much smaller than our last house, and it is plenty. I mean, I really have not felt crammed in this house.
Oh, not at all.
Like
I could stay here for a while and it would be.
And even if the next time if we get to buy again, if it were a house similar in size to this, I think we would be just fine. Like, I don't think we feel that need now of like, because we were talking a couple of years ago about upsizing again. And like,
our old house was 2,500 square
26
feet.
Almost.
And we were like, with a family
kids,
of 5, we need to have at least 3,000. And now we're in 1,800 and
so content with it.
So content. But I think part of that is our attitude toward life now, right? Yeah. Like, I think part of contentedness is, and loss played into this for us. Yeah, and I think loss does play into it for people, especially like you could take this principle and apply it to your marriage or all sorts of things. But the loss of something that you thought was going to be tends to breed ground for contentedness.
If you allow yourself to grieve.
If you allow yourself to grieve.
Which is funny because this is very much turning into the conversation around our stories, which is exactly what we're going to talk about today. So it's like a perfect lead-in for that. But
yes. Yeah. I think, before we get into that, I want to encourage you all that grief is the gateway to the restoration that you're looking for.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't skip the grief process.
Yeah.
You just can't. And I think so many of us in America or in the world in general would like to skip over grief.
Yeah.
We
And in
let
the church.
right. And in the church for sure.
Church. We don't like that
we
word.
just want to give it all to God.
Skip to Sunday. We want to get to Sunday.
Right to Sunday and forget about Saturday. And Saturday was the day between. Like, could God have risen himself? Like, Jesus could have risen from the grave the next day. Yeah. He could have done it immediately. Why did they wait 3 days? There has to be time to grieve. Like, God was so purposeful.
And he needed to let his people grieve too.
Yep.
They needed to let his disciples grieve the loss of their friend and their mentor and their savior.
And if they didn't have that, I think it wouldn't have been as joyous as it was on Sunday.
I think even if he had like been nailed to the cross and then he like came off the cross and was like, you can't keep me down. They'd be like, yeah, Jesus, now take over, the empire. But that's not his way of doing things. Right. Oftentimes, God's way of doing things is allowing us to actually endure and experience grief and loss, because if we will choose to enter into it, it actually, like you said, it becomes a good fertile soil for new life and hope to grow out of, and healing to grow out of, and that's not something you're going to get when you just skip over that process. Hence why I think we've experienced a lot of contentedness in this home, because we allowed ourselves to be sad about giving up the last one. And we allowed our kids to be sad. And when they cried in the car driving home, after we had moved, and, Declan was crying in the back seat, and he was really sad about the move. Yeah. Or the first night we stayed here, he came in the middle of the night and he was just sad, and not rushing them through their tears, not telling them it's okay, you're fine, don't worry, don't cry. It was just, this is really, really sad. And this hurts a lot. And we cried with them. We cried in front of them. We let them cry. Yep. And we have all found a really true, honest peace and contentedness in this new place. And I don't think we would have if we had rushed them through their grief, or us through our grief. Yeah.
And there's so much, like, I do want to do. I'm going to tell you about all the podcast episodes I want to do from this podcast episode, because I think there is a real issue that parents have with sitting with their kids in their grief, because no one's ever sat with them in theirs. And
we can't do something for our kids we haven't done for ourselves, or have done for us.
There's one saying that some parents will say that really, like, it gets me going.
What?
And it's like, oh, boys don't cry.
Oh yeah.
And I'm like, let's go. Because although
Jesus wasn't a boy then.
So true. That's so true. And I think it's denying the creation that we were made in, right? Like, so when I think about loss, I always get the image of like forest fires and all that they do for regrowth of an ecosystem. So I don't know if you know this, but when was it 2018, Josh?
What 2018?
When the big like gorge forest fire happened.
Oh, I don't remember. It was
like so devastating in the Pacific Northwest. Anyways, 2018, 2018, because that's when Declan fell. Yeah. 2018. There we go. Or 2017. One of the two. Yeah. Okay. I'll fight about that. Anyway, so there was this big devastating forest fire. It rampaged all through this beautiful part of the Northwest called the Gorge. And it's got waterfalls, and it's called the Gorge because it's gorgeous. And well, it's probably not called that.
That's not why it's called that, but it is gorgeous. It's called the Gorge.
That's why I call it the Gorge. Anyways, so big forest fire came through and devastated so many things. We had friends who were firefighters who were fighting in that fire all the way from the metro area.
Yeah.
And this is more like getting on the way to Eastern Oregon, so it's not close to Portland, super close or anything. It's about an hour outside. And I started hearing more research about how the ashes from a fire actually, when they lay on the forest floor, provide a certain amount of nutrients. This is how cool God is. Like, he knew before fires and devastation in the fall were even a thing, that like when disaster happened, creation would prevail. Right. And so
there's always a sense of life being born out of some kind of
ashes. Right. And so out of the ashes, there's certain chemical properties that are invested into the soil that allow it to grow back more luscious.
And there are like certain seeds that don't they don't actually they won't plant and fertilize and grow without the fire happening.
Right.
Like that's why you'll hear that there's like certain controlled burns that they'll do, because it actually is necessary for a forest to have fires. Like they have to happen for the kind of death and life cycle to process over and over again.
And we're over here praying that we never have a fire ever in our lives.
And it's realizing, and this is how this all relates to our stories, is the fact that we try so hard to not look at the fires that have happened in our lives. And the reality is we rob ourselves of the life that we're actually meant to experience and the freedom we're meant to experience by not looking at those places.
Right.
So when it's like the fires have happened and we just want to ignore that they've happened, or we want to, in the church world, we want to say this fire happened, but then I met Jesus and he made it all new. And so now I'm good. Like the whole story's been redeemed. And the problem with that is that the redemption that God does through our story does not happen at the moment of salvation. That's why there's this whole process in our life of sanctification, which is the process of becoming more and more like Jesus through our life.
Right.
And we can't become more like Jesus if we're harboring all of these stories of pain.
Well, and I wouldn't even say like maybe you're not consciously harboring it, but maybe you just, and this was true for my story, there was an incident. One of the first things that I remember was almost drowning in a hot tub. And I've always looked at that story because, and I always feel silly when I say this, but I know that it's true, so I don't need to feel silly.
No.
But I was drowning in the hot tub. My mom was tending to my sister, who is at the other end of the pool, I think. And this man in a white t-shirt, blue jeans, pulled me out of this hot tub. And I'm going to share this we are going to get to Jalen's version
we're gonna do
of
a
her
part
story.
2 of the last.
It's just not happening today, but stay tuned. And a man in a white t-shirt, blue jeans, pulled me up out of the water, saved me. And when my mom came back to get me, he was gone. And no one was around, or even and no one would leave. Who would leave a child there, right? And so my mom then, as I was older, proceeded to tell me that she saw that same man in a white t-shirt, blue jeans, when she was in the hospital getting skin grafts after she had been in an explosion burn. And she couldn't have anybody in her room because the skin grafts and
it's like
all the infection and all of those types of things. And so he would just sit in there in the corner. And it's always been something that I feel like has connected me and my mom together. But I kind of wrote that story off like, God saved me. How great.
Right.
And I never acknowledged the hard part of that, which was, where was my mom? Why wasn't she attending to me? Why did an angel save me and not her? And that day, although unintentional by my mom, right? Trust was broken with my mom in my mind. But trust was built with the Lord, right? And my brain wanted to focus on the good thing so that I could get through it, so that I could survive. That event was a trauma event for me. And I kind of had written it off. Like, oh, it's just part of my story. It's not a big deal. But those events in your life, however big or small you think that they are, they impact you.
Yep.
They impact you. And you will never know what events have impacted you in the way that they've impacted you unless you take a look at it.
Yeah.
Unless you decide to go in with a professional and make sense and truth out of that story.
Yeah.
It's really important. It helps us understand ourselves, why we're wired the way that we are, why we react to things the way that we are. What are some of the other benefits of stepping into work with your story?
Well, I think part of it is that there's a certain sense of safety that comes from that when you can do that with people that are trustworthy. So I know a big part of it for myself was there was just a sense of a lack of emotional safety, right? A lack of emotional safety and connection with myself and with other people because of parts of my story and how my own sense of trust and safety was broken or was damaged. And so it's played out, the hard part is the things that you are living out in your life right now that are impacting your life negatively, whether that be your relationships to others or to yourself or to God, whether that be the your constant like drive and need to perform and achieve, whether that be your need to constantly please everyone, or this fierce independence that you can only rely on and trust yourself, right? All these different things, those come from moments in your story. And we all just think, oh, that's just part of my personality, or it's just how I am. I'm just a people pleaser. I'm just a high performer. I'm just really, really independent. And I trust myself more than I trust other people. All of those things have story behind them. All of those things they're not just like, they don't just show up in your life one day. There are things that you have experienced that have led you to believe this is how it is. This is how I am. This is how God is. This is how other people are. Yeah. And so the biggest benefit that you get from this process is that you actually get to see life come into those parts of your everyday life, that in areas that maybe have felt really damaged, or have felt really stuck, or have felt really lifeless. And you get to see, when you go back and work through those things, you actually get to see the fruit of them happen now in your current day life. So it's not just about getting stuck in the past, but it's realizing that your past is affecting your present significantly. And so you're doing it for, it's like a hummingbird outside our room. You're doing it for the quality of your life now. And I think we've both seen that in terms of, as we've done this work through our stories, we have seen the fruit in our everyday life now. We've seen the greater patience that we've had, or we've seen having more peace than we have before, because certain things that were living inside of our bodies and in our hearts and our minds finally coming to rest, right? And so it's just, that's the reason that we're spending all of this time and money getting certified in all of this, is because we believe so much in what it does. And we have a real heart for the church, especially because the hard part is that naturally, when we have not addressed our stories, we start to, our pain starts to spill out onto the people around us. Yeah. Because it's undealt with, and then it shows up in our actions. And this has happened a lot in the church, which has in many places made a church, or the church, a really unsafe place for people who have pain. Right. So people come into churches with pain and hurt, and they're looking for safety. And the problem is, you can't provide a safe space for people with their pain if you have not sat with your own and had people sit with you in yours. And so then we become a place of either we brush over people's pain, or we explain it away, saying it's just spiritual warfare. And I'm 100% believe that a lot of what we experience is spiritual warfare. And I think there's the reality that we can't just say, oh, it's just spiritual warfare. And if you just pray more, and if you read scripture more and memorize more scripture, and you go to more studies, and you serve, and you do X, Y, and Z, then all of that's going to go away. That is a Christian version of performing in order to negate our pain. It's behavior modification. And that's not what Christ invites us into. He doesn't invite us into a relationship of behavior modification. He invites us into transformation. So
yeah, that's the thing that I think many people latch onto, right? It's like, I've been saved from my sin, and now I just need to not sin.
Look how different I'm acting now.
Right. Look how different I'm acting now. And the reality is, God doesn't just want you to be saved. He wants you to heal, and he wants you to be free by his Spirit. And he wants you to have power and all of the fruits of the Spirit. And part of that sanctification process that Josh talked about earlier is taking that fruit that we see appear, the behavior modification, and you guys are feeling this kind of stuff in your bodies. Like, my marriage is not where I want it to be. I have this secret thing that if I ever told anyone at the church, they wouldn't know what to do with me. All of those pieces that it's too bad that we have to hide parts of ourselves in a church that's supposed to be like the body caring for the body. But I think a lot of it is because we just have not entered into the place of discipleship in the church. We are there to consume.
Yeah. And that's a very Western church thing, I think. I think other parts of the world, other faith communities that love Jesus, that believe in Jesus, like other Christians in other parts of the world, they live their faith out very differently. And I think the Western church, because of how we're structured and how our idea of what church is, like discipleship is not even on our radars most of the time.
No, and I think we have such a viewpoint of discipleship that's like mentorship more than it is discipleship.
Yeah.
And discipleship and mentorship are different in the sense that it's not just you teaching someone how to do something. It's you being willing to invest in this. That's what discipleship is. It's investing in that relationship with someone else and being that presence, and we see that in the life of Jesus with his disciples, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like he did life with his disciples. He wasn't just telling them what to do,
right.
Although he did do that sometimes. He was also with them when tragedy struck and when like John the Baptizer died. Like he was with them in their grief.
Yeah.
And they were with him in his grief.
Yep.
And so I think, back to the story thing in the church, we are lacking the space to be able to sit in people's stuff because we have so much going on in our own worlds.
Yeah.
That one, we're not like comfortable with letting people in necessarily, or if we are, it's like, I don't know if they can handle this.
Yeah.
And there might be ramifications for that or consequences or all of those things. And so there's part of me that's like, it's sad that we have to be, certified in trauma-informed story coaching in order.
Because why isn't this just like a natural thing?
But I think the fall just makes it we're getting more and more disconnected from people as life goes on. And so we're needing to come back. And I think the Lord is making ways for us to come back to this place of relational restoration.
Yeah. And I think that, one of the things that we're up against in our culture is we're very much a solutions driven culture. Mm-hmm. We're like a destination driven culture, right? Yep. And everything else that we do, it's like, when I get the next house, when I get the next job, I have this problem, let's fix it. Right. Mm-hmm. And the problem with taking that model, it might work for other areas of life, but when we put that model onto people aren't a problem to be fixed, despite how big the issues in their life might be. And so when people try and bring their pain and their hurt into these spaces, they're often faced with options to provide a fix or a solution, right? And so
it's almost like trying to build a tower instead of nurturing a garden,
right? And so what this work is about is actually inviting people into space, and inviting ourselves into spaces where we say, I'm not here to necessarily find a solution or create a fix or give answers, but I'm actually just learning how to provide presence and space and ask questions so that somebody can tell the real story of their life. And maybe for the first time ever, have it be held with grace and compassion and understanding, and love and safety. And so when we do that, and what we've witnessed is when that happens, because those stories are brought into those safe places, people actually start to experience healing in some of those key stories, and they get to see someone hold it well. Mm-hmm. And suddenly the root is ripped up, and that story might be a root that has led to things like
I'm not enough.
Shame, or I'm not enough, or isolation, or maybe it's led to things like I have to be perfect, I have to perform the best out of everyone, or maybe it's led to I'm the only one who can hold it all together, and I've got to keep everyone safe. And so there's all these different fruits it leads to. We are so conditioned to just like cut the fruit off that we don't like, right? So like a great example of this, I think, especially in the church today, is dealing with issues like pornography addiction. So our solution to that is usually get a filter for your computer, have an accountability partner who you text when you're tempted, and like maybe go through a class or a course or something, right? Those are not bad things at all. However, they all address the behavior and they do not address why the behavior started.
They address the fruit.
And so the point of this is to actually go back and start to uncover and ask questions and learn and see, where did this come from in the first place? Like what has brought this to the place where it is such a source of, because it's providing some kind of safety or soothing or coping for a very real need. And this is just the thing to that person latched onto that is providing for a real need, but in a way that is destructive to their heart and their mind and their soul.
Right.
And so that's just one example of that. But if we want to be an effective church for the world, if we want to actually be the place where the sick people go again, and not just a place where a bunch of people who already know Jesus are just showing up on a Sunday for a service, I think, and this is why I say we're so passionate about churches, I think that we have to become safe people again.
Right.
And we have to become, we get to become safe people again, and we get to experience safety for ourselves, because then there's this natural desire to see others experience that freedom.
Yeah.
And it becomes less about like trying to fix people, or it becomes less about trying to ourselves live like this perfect life so that we're a good example for Jesus. You know, like I'm trying to make sure that I'm a good example for him and that I look the way that I'm supposed to so that people want to know Jesus. Well, what if you just actually were free, and then you naturally lived a life that was so attractive to people that they were like, how, after all you've been through, how do you feel and see life the way you do? And then you get to share about Jesus. So
story work. So we never said what we're certified in, but part of Restored Living growing and getting its wings, so to speak, is us becoming trauma-informed story coaches. And so that is the certification that we are currently pursuing and will be done by the end of October, which is super exciting. We're almost done. And the reason why we want to share that with you guys is we have been starting to take on clients, helping them go through their stories. We've also been writing and working out a class that kind of goes through that image of a tree, like I was talking about, to help you kind of take those first steps to, what is my root? Like, how do I know what my root is? How can I get there? And it's a process. And so, you know, it's a process of you rebuilding, right? You seeking out therapy, you seeking out a coach, you having safe people in your life and doing the work. You got to do the work. Like, there's work that you have to do. And then there's the restoring process that only the Lord can do and only a relationship with the Lord can do, right? You can do as much rebuilding over here as you want, but the Lord is the one that restores. And it's really important to remember that there is a partnership with our Creator that we have to have so that those places in ourselves can be healed. And yes, the Lord uses people to help that restoration process. The Lord uses work with your therapist to help that restoration process. But at the end of the day, He is the healer. And I really want you to hear that. Like, you are not the healer of yourself. You have to invite the Lord in truthfully and honestly. And I will tell you, when I fully surrendered my own free will to the Lord and said, Lord, I cannot stop people from betraying me. I cannot stop people from hurting me, but I trust you. I trust you with my life. I trust you with what happens next. If Josh and I don't make it, or if we do, I trust you with the fact that I don't need to just make things happen in order to live my life, that you actually, you got me. I fully trust that you've got me. And it takes time for us to break down those parts of our story and be like, I will be okay. I'm going to be okay because I have the Lord and because He's got me, right? And so I think we try to rush that process. But in the end, those two things combine together, and it's not like 1 + 2 = 3. You can do 2 + 1 = 3. It's whatever you want to do. But the third result is renewal, right? Like, you are a renewed person. You have freedom. When we are partnering with the Lord and being willing to do the work that we need to do, there is a renewed sense of self that comes from that.
Yep.
And there is something so beautiful about what the Lord wants to do in that. It's not like he can't just heal us right away. He can. He totally can. And I've seen him do it. Like, I've seen him do it without me doing any effort of my own.
Right.
However, I do think that he is so wise in letting us be part of the solution.
Yeah.
There's like a grace there that he, like, when we go walk through this work, this goes back to what we said about jumping from Friday to Sunday, right? The fact that Saturday exists is a grace from the Lord.
One, it's teaching us to know his character more, because the reality is that if he healed us in an instant and answered every prayer, we would know him as healer. We would know him as provider. We would not know him as comforter. We would not know his patience. We would not know his presence. He would be like a vending machine for us. Yep. Like, I put my coin of prayer in and I get exactly what I asked for out. And then we would only come to him when we were needing something. And otherwise we wouldn't. But when he doesn't just answer right away in the way we want, or when he doesn't just heal us right away, what we get to know is him. We don't get to know him without that. Yeah. You can't. It would be like with Jay and I, if the only time that we interacted in life is when I came to her, I was like, I need you to do this. And she said, okay, I'll do it. And then she came to me and she's like, I need you to do this. And I said, okay, I'll do it. And there was nothing else. I wouldn't know her. I would have no knowledge of her heart. I have no knowledge of what she loves, what she cares about. I have no knowledge of her sadness and the things she's been through. I wouldn't know anything about her. So why would we translate that model over onto God and expect us to have a really good relationship with him? God, I'll just trust you if you just answer my prayers.
Right.
Well, is this about God giving what you want, or do you actually want him?
Right.
Do you actually want to know him?
And I wonder how many Christians actually want to know God.
And are we ever even taught that that's a whole part of this thing? Like, we're taught about salvation, and we're taught about how God saves us from death and eternity away from him. And we're taught about how God can heal, and they're all true things. But are we only following Jesus for what he can give us? Or are we following him because we're like, wow, you're really good. And I want to get to know you better.
Come on.
And I want you to know me better.
Yep.
And it's such a richer life. I spent so many years just following God, but not knowing him. And the more that I know him now, it's so much richer. It's so much better. And he didn't take all my things away right away or at all. He didn't just heal every little thing that I asked him to. And I'm so glad he didn't, because I would have never.
Like Paul says, like, I love the thorn in my flesh because it reminds me that my weakness is made strong
in him
because of you. And so I know we have to wrap up here soon. But I want to invite you guys into part of this with us, because we want to see, over this last 6 months, we've heard more stories and more affirmations that the Lord is just really calling us to this work in the SSA community and in the betrayal community and in story work as a whole. And so that's why this certification is happening. But we need your help. And we've been so blessed to be able to put on this podcast. The Lord has provided amazingly, but we want to invite you guys to partner with us in these next stages that we have going on with Restored Living. And so part of that partnership is, first and foremost, please pray.
All the time.
Pray for us, pray for protection over us.
Pray for our marriage, pray for our kids.
If you regularly listen to this podcast, pray for us. And the reason I say that first is because we feel your prayers. We know that there is a call in our life to do this work, and the enemy knows it too. and
we know that when we've seen God show up and provide, that it's not without your prayers being a part of that process.
Right.
And it's not without the prayers of people that we love and know us being a part of that process. And so we know God can do way more than we can in our own strength. And so that's the first thing we want is just prayers for us and for our marriage and our family as we move forward in doing this, because we know that the more ground that we take back, the more the enemy gets pissed off.
Yes.
And the more that he starts to throw and attack. And so we cherish those prayers a lot.
Yes. And then 2, we would ask that you consider donating financially to Restored Living.
Yep.
And that can look a multitude of different ways.
Mhm.
Some of you guys religiously watch the podcast, and we've met some of you, and which is wild because we don't
So
live in the
fun.
same place
Yeah.
or even know that you're listening, and we found out via meeting you. And so we love when you say hi when we're in person, and we live kind of a more quiet life here in Arizona, I feel
Yeah.
like. So when we get to see people, it's
Super
really
fun.
so fun. But financially giving to the ministry allows us to be able to do more of the work that we want to do.
Yeah.
It allows us to be able to not sacrifice our life savings to do
Yeah.
certifications and stuff like that. But it invests in this ministry that we believe is going to really help a lot of people heal.
Yeah. And we have, up until this point, the reason you haven't heard us mention things like donating or partnering much is just because we knew we weren't in the place yet where we had the kind of structure and stability to confidently ask people to do that. Mm-hmm. And so in the last 6 to 9 months, we have partnered with a nonprofit organization, In Focus Ministries, and they are like a parent organization that helps small ministries grow and develop. And so what that's doing is that gives us some structure on the back end of things, where they are helping us with things like taxes and filing status and funds and all of that. So what we will do is, in the show notes, we'll place a link for you that takes you to our donation page. Through that, you can do a one-time gift, you can do monthly giving. I mean, even if like 20 people gave $5 a month, that's $100 a month that goes towards a lot of the things that we have invested in. But up until now, we have used whatever money God has provided for us to invest in these trainings. And I will tell you, it's not cheap. It is so worth it, which is why we've done it. However, there's more training that we want to get so that we can go even deeper and further with people. And that training is going to require a lot financially. Mm-hmm. And so we're trusting the Lord is going to provide that.
There's also resources we want to be able to create for you that require me to be able to work on them. And
ideally, both of us
we have
having
to
more
eat
time.
and we have to do things. So part of that is the giving that you guys do is so that we can put this ministry on. And like you guys saw in the summertime, with kids and life and bills and all of the things, we would love to be able to make Restored Living more of our full-time thing. And so we're just asking that you pray over a potential donation. If you felt like this ministry has given anything to you, if you would like to sow a seed back, we would be so grateful and appreciative. We'd love to give shout outs on the podcast for our donors. And we do plan on in the future having some special content on our website that is for donors only.
Yeah. Kind of like, I don't know if we'll use Patreon or what yet, but it'll be like if you partner with the ministry, we want to give you extra things to show our appreciation. Right. And again, all of those resources, they take time. A lot of you don't know, Jay's been working part-time since earlier this year. I work full-time as a nurse. So this is very much something we do in the time that we have outside of that.
Which doesn't feel like a lot.
It does not feel like a lot. Even today, we're like, do you really have time for this? Yes, we need to make time for it because that's important. But we are so confident that the Lord has invited us into this work, that he's invited us to partner with his kids to really see a world that is hurting and lost and broken, find freedom in Jesus, like real, true, lasting freedom that is not just their salvation, but is sanctification and healing and restoration. Right. And so, like Jay said, anything that you guys can give is so, so appreciated. And we will, our commitment is that as we move forward, you guys will know where that money is going. It will be very obvious. Like it is not going to us taking vacations or
we're gonna buy a new house.
Like it is going towards trainings. It is going towards resources. It's going towards us being able to take a small salary so she can be home, so that she can invest in doing all of these different resources and creating them. So that's our commitment, is to always be transparent in that. But we just want to invite you to be a part of it with us, because we know that this is not something we can do alone. Yep. And
part of those resources, just to give you guys an overview of the topics that we want to dive into, obviously same-sex attraction is the one that we get talked about and most questions about. And there's really not a ton of material on same-sex attraction. And so we'd love to be one of the voices that talks about that, I mean, I don't know if we love it. We love doing it because the Lord is asking us to do it.
And I think too, what we've learned through this process for us, and for myself, is that a lot of that journey has to do with our stories.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And so we want to provide resources and also provide context and space for people to navigate the story of their life as they walk out their commitment to the Lord in their sexuality and in their relationships. So that's a big area that we know just needs help.
Yep. And then, offering classes locally in Arizona and e-courses online that churches can access. And we have all of these grand visions and dreams to talk about, like talk to the next generation about sexuality, and how do we talk about sexuality in the church in a healthy way, and really paint the picture of sexuality in a wholesome way instead of a damaging way. There's so many things I could go on and on and on, but your financial giving to this ministry means so much. So you might hear us talk about that a lot more over this next month, 2 months. We hope you really consider being a part of our Restored Living community. That's what we would consider it.
I mean, in fact, so here's what's crazy, guys. Typically on average, every episode we have about 200-ish listeners. So it's not like this is some crazy podcast reaching millions of people. I would love it if one day it did. If that's what God wants to do, that's so cool. If not, 200 people is a lot of people.
It's a lot of people.
If half the people on this podcast gave $10 a month, that is what, $1,000 right there. If you it's 2 coffees a month that you give up.
Might be one now.
Might be one actually.
Inflation.
Yeah. And if all those people did, that's $2,000 a month. And what we could do with those resources to create the content that we're wanting to create, to get certified and trained, to be able to give back to the body of Christ in really tangible ways. I give you those actual numbers to just show you how little it would take from each individual person to make a really huge difference. And if you can give more than that, that's phenomenal. But there is very real change in people's lives that is going to happen because of that faithfulness and generosity. And we only want you to do it if you feel like the Lord has asked you to. Yes. And so if you need to go pray about it. If you're like, no, I already know, then you're going to be able to click the link in the show notes. We'll also share it. We'll have it on our Instagram for you to go to as well, and make it really easy for you guys. And then you'll get, the nice thing about the organization we partnered with is, it's a tax-free
donation.
So when at the end of the year, you'll get a statement for your giving, just like you would if you gave to your church or to another nonprofit organization. So all of that stuff is taken care of. That's why we partnered with them. And they do it all for a really, really small fee that they charge to basically run the ministry that they're running. So we just ask you guys to prayerfully consider that. And
another way that you can donate to the ministry is by receiving coaching yourself. So we do offer for service coaching, and those act like donations. When you have sessions with us, they act like donations to our ministry and further that form. And so we try and keep our coaching services really low. Yeah. And so if you want more information on that, please message us. If you want more one-on-one coaching, we do couples, we do individuals. We really do focus on the individual more than the couple.
Even when we work with couples, it's a combination of both. And so we will also put a link in the show notes for our website and like the contact us form. You can send us an email that way, or if you want to just pop on Instagram, you can DM us there as well. And we can talk through what some of those for fee services look like. And we will explore options with you because we care about this work getting out. And so that's why we're not telling you a set fee, because we really don't have a set fee. We have a recommended donation per session, but we are flexible within that. And so we want to connect with you if this is something that you feel like you're needing. Or I would even add on this last piece, and then we'll probably wrap up, which is that if you are a part of a church that values this kind of work, that values trauma-informed care, that values people and their stories, and that wants to see people get free, and they're looking for new ways to do that, where it is spirit-led, biblically sound, that is what we're about. And so connecting us with your church leaders, people in your church who want to implement this kind of work, that would be phenomenal. Maybe it's not that you have money to give right now, but you're like, I do have a relationship with my pastor, and I know that is passionate about this kind of work. Awesome. If you would be willing to connect us, and we can share the vision of this, just like we are with our own church and our pastor as well, that is something we absolutely welcome and would be thrilled to do, because like we said, we want to get this out to anyone we can.
Yeah. So with that, thanks for joining us again.
Yeah, so
it's good to be back.
Oh.
We miss you guys, and we will be back on the IG.
Yes.
We're now all a little bit more settled, so we're getting back into like normal rhythms and routines. But thanks for being so patient with us, and thanks for listening and supporting the podcast. Again, if you found this helpful or this impacted you in some way, please share it.
Yeah.
You can tag us at Restored Living and we'll restore you.
Yep.
But sharing this podcast is the way to help this mission grow.
Yeah. So we love you guys. And with that, let's go to Today Restored.
Bye.
Bye.
Staring out the window pane. The harder that I try, the more I